Okay, so let's get started. Welcome everyone. I'm here together with Julien to talk about the top hacks which happened in the last 12 months. What did we learn about them? And where's the road going? And just as a quick intro, like about myself, but I'll let Julien introduce himself too. I'm founding partner, CTO at ChainSecurity, and have been in the space for like 5 years in this really blockchain security space, in the IT security space for like 10 years and coding for quite a lot longer. Julien? So.
Well, guys, fixing the mic. My name is Julien Bouteloup. I've been in the space for quite some times. I've been a coder for even longer than this. And I'm the one that founded Rekt and ChainSecurity. We cover some interesting and spicy stories in the space of blockchain. So keep us really busy. And I'm also running a Stake Capital group. We have a bunch of different companies, StakeDAO, Blackpool. We have a hedge fund, also been pretty active in the investment side. I'm also involved in Curve Finance. So yeah.
So for those who aren't aware, like Rekt News creates these amazing videos, but is mostly known, of course, for what Julien said, the takes on the big hacks on Rekt.news. And quickly, ChainSecurity, we are a smart contract auditor. We work with many of the big DeFi players and other protocols to secure them. But we also do a lot of research, developing tools, but our heart is really into figuring out new kind of vulnerabilities. And there is quite some track record over the time of having done that again and again. And this is also why I'm very interested to be here and to talk about some of the new ones. To kick this off, we had many years of security in the IT security space, very, very many. In the blockchain space, not so many, but still some. And we learned a lot of things in the past, right? So the question is, did we learn from those mistakes? So I have this here, guess, right? So there isn't, there are some learnings we made, but even though the re-entrancy attack, a very famous, perhaps the first very famous blockchain attack, is one of the oldest, 2016, the famous DAO hack, right, and so on. It still happens again and again, but sometimes with new flavors. Like almost 40% of all re-entrancy attacks which really hit protocols which with significant losses happened just in the last 12 months. Still, other forms of attacks are coming up, and we'll go over them. But just to give you an idea, this is the Rekt leaderboard. Yeah, I mean, it's a leaderboard you don't want to be on. As auditors anyway, you don't want to be on. As projects, of course, you don't want to be on it too. And this is the additions of last year, right? It looked really different, and now we can scroll down. Before, we could not really scroll down. Now we can scroll down. More and more projects are here, really high losses, smaller losses too, all across the space. So we still have that major problem of hacks every other week. And I want to make this a little bit, perhaps also a little bit interactive. I have Julien here. I'll give usually a quick overview of the vulnerability, which was there. And then we'll discuss a little bit also of the impact outside of the purely auditor mind, right? The technical hack and so on. So to make that interesting, I took quotes from Rekt News. And it's about guessing the vulnerability. This one I liked a lot. Is there anyone here who'd say, I know this, I know the hack? You can shout it, I'll repeat. Nomad? Yes, Nomad bridge. So this is our first one. So what happened here? Quickly as a recap, many of you might know what happened. We had a protocol. It was audited, but it was a bridge, right? So it did an upgrade. And this upgrade very likely wasn't audited. And then it was pushed out. Now, there was a combination of things which caused the issue in the end. Before the upgrade, there were state updates, which the upgraded code couldn't even do anymore, but because they were on chain already, they would cause, in the end, in this case, that every relay proof from another chain would be considered valid. And why could everyone join in? We had that attacker. Perhaps, I'm guessing here, not the most sophisticated attacker, but he definitely found this vulnerability. For example, he burned 350K in ETH on a reverting transaction, trying this thing. And it wasn't like one where you could say, like, of course he had to compete with front running or whatever, right? It wasn't one of these types. But in the end, he was successful. He stole like 100 wrapped Bitcoin. But now, everyone could see the attack, could very easily copy it, and many did. Right, so that's where everyone joined in, white hats, black hats, gray hats, and they completely drained the bridge over the 190 million.
Bots. A lot of bots.
Okay, like generic MEV front-running bots?
Yeah.
We talk about bots later too, but did they return the funds usually, or do you know?
Well, depends on the organization that is running those bots, right? And sometimes they have no organization running those bots. Those bots running by themselves.
Okay, truly autonomous organizations, huh? Yeah. So what did we learn from this hack? I can give some of the technical learnings, right? So something which gets preached again and again, but is something which works really nice. Like you can do mainnet fork tests, and especially simple negative tests like this. Any transaction was suddenly valid, right? A simple test could have caught that. Obviously, you should get your upgrades audited. Like here, an auditor is speaking. Yes, you should get your stuff audited. But also new, like if you do an upgrade, you need to validate deployments. And on the response side of things, this attack, I think it lasted for hours. Like it wasn't something, one transaction, everything gone.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
And
it's usually the same type of response where because of people being in a few different regions of the world, they have to connect on the same group chat, and it takes a bit of time, and sometimes the developer that is involved or understand the vulnerability is not reachable, so it takes time, and that's why it can go for a couple of hours. There's no shutdown mechanism or emergency protection. One point is really interesting is a validate deployment. Sometimes you can have the most sophisticated audit and the code is really bulletproof, but there's a mistake in the deployment, and people believe that they actually deployed the code that was audited, but it's a wrong location on the repository, and they actually push the wrong code. And they link to, and sometimes they actually link the code to the audit, but it's the wrong code. If they had published and deployed the right code, they will have not suffered from this hack, which is quite fascinating.
Yeah, same for me. Like as auditors, we used to just look at code and don't think too much about deployments, but this has to change, I think. We go to the next one. I'm a little bit looking at the time already. So, another quote, yeah. Which Thrive audited code caused a 7-day ETH freeze on a major DeFi platform? Compound, correct. So here what happened? Compound updated their Oracle to be based on Uniswap v3 instead of Uniswap v2, and that code had been audited, but when they did the upgrade, they realized that on chain there was a legacy like compound ETH implementation which didn't have some function, the underlying function that would revert in the code, which was audited. That wasn't obvious because you did have the right interface. It looked like everything would work. And Compound quickly figured out how to fix this and then needed 7 days because of the governance method they have. Again, the auditors take here, like, don't stop with negative testing, do positive mainnet testing, right? This would have helped a lot in this case. Again, validate your deployments the second time here. And a little bit of take, more perhaps controversial, but just duplicating the same audit again and again has diminishing returns. What are your takes on the Compound case?
No, I think Compound is quite interesting case because it's a very strong team. They've been there for a very long time. Probably one of the first major project in a blockchain space. But still, they did a pretty bad, I would say, mistake. If you look at the vulnerability on this one, it's quite something that normally shouldn't have happened for a quite sophisticated protocol, but still happened. So deploying code in production is tough, and even if you have a really solid code, you really need to double check your deployment process and also try to understand the scope of the deployment. And I think in this one was really not well understood by the team, or the history of the project, basically.
And I was wondering, for response, to write something down with, like, have something in the protocol to act immediately, but I left it out, right? So, like, Compound had the 7-day delay, and you would, like, say they could actually have been harmed during that time. But on the other hand, it's a huge benefit to not have certain circuit breakers. There's a big discussion currently on the eSecurity channel on circuit breakers. And again, funds were frozen, right? And usually circuit breakers do exactly that, right? They just freeze, and then you recover afterwards. So in that sense, the impact luckily was just a freeze. Yeah,
it's just a freeze for the project, but because you have many different projects that have and are plugged into that protocol, you also have a huge collateral damages across the entire ecosystem. Some people are building on those type of projects for Oracle, and then they also freeze, but some people take leverage or type of derivatives, and then they get liquidated. So it's not, sometimes it's not only at one place the risk of the damage, is also because it's DeFi legal, it's also across the ecosystem, and then it causes many more hacks to happen because of one major hack. So when you see one hack in the ecosystem, you can almost be sure that you will see either replication of those hacks or something that will enable additional hack because of this particular hack, which is, again, very interesting, especially for Rekt.
Because we talked about deployment validation here twice, I'll very quickly pitch something which we just told the security community and the DeFi Security Summit just before. So we are having a small new tool which does deployment validation, right? And then basically you have a Git repo, you check it out, and then you run that, and it says you, like, is that really the code you have? It debugs the state, so you can actually do this thing. It's not rocket science. It's not like a formal verification, whatever, like something really complex, but it really solves this problem and makes it much easier to go in and say, hey, now I understand what the deployment has been. So we hope that quite a lot of these hacks we have seen can actually be prevented with that approach. There's a short summary. There is a longer talk I gave yesterday on this, so feel free to look that up in the DeFi Security Summit. And for those who are interested, like, just go to github.com/ChainSecurity/deployment validation, just sign up, and We are very soon making this fully open source. Like this isn't a product itself; it's just something to help. Next one, back to the hacks. Have you tried turning this on off and on again? I love that quote from Rekt News too. A little bit harder. Anyone? Yes, very good. Solana was what was mentioned. Sorry, stupid me. No, almost. Almost. Another one. It's not Solana. Yes, Binance Smart Chain or Binance Chain. So what happened here? We had an attacker who, like, pretty elaborate, pretty clever thing. Like, he realized that you could create fake proofs using a vulnerability in the library which was used in the precompiles on Binance Smart Chain, and that library came from Cosmos, was used in the precompiles. It wasn't used by Cosmos, so it was like a little bit older and so on, right? And with that, he could like just mint him infinite tokens. He used a lending platform on Binance Smart Chain called Venus to convert them and tried to exit as quickly as possible. And why did he try to exit as quickly as possible? Because Binance Smart Chain has a special security feature, right? And was able to stop the chain shortly after the attack. This way, the current value at risk was like exceeding 500 million. So a lot of that was still stuck now in Binance Smart Chain. Again, the auditor's take here, like it's very hard to do these crypto libraries correctly. That's repeated again and again. Reuse the things which have been battle tested. Make sure to audit your crypto primitives too. But then the new thing here, like the social layer is the last line of defense, and Ethereum knows this, right? We did this too. That was 2016. And the social layer fixed a bug, so to speak. But here it fixed it too. So how they got a lot of heat for that, right? I'd say rightfully so. What is that the same as what happened to Ethereum? Should they have acted differently? Should they have let it go?
Well, I think back then in Ethereum we're pretty early in the early days of this blockchain roller coaster. So decision of rolling back then was not that obvious, but a little bit more legitimate. In this case, we about 8 years later, it's a mistake on some cryptographic deployment. So I'm not sure. Yeah, and also this one is a fork of Ethereum, so it's a little bit more complicated to justify such a move. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question of like basically you did see the centralization parts, and many other projects have the same problem, right? That you could hold them.
I mean, my point is this one, like if you look at Binance, they said in the early days, they were saying, okay, we'll deploy a new chain because Ethereum didn't follow they didn't left the money back then, but they did exactly the same 6 years later, so it's funny.
Yeah. Okay, so we are running out of time, as always. So it feels like reading only about the same attack over and over again. And who has an idea? And actually, many ideas.
View-only reentrancy.
It's the read-only reentrancy is the underlying one, and we'll have a lot of hacks of those. One, there was D-Force, there was Market XYZ, this Midas or Midas Capital, and those were the ones which had hacks which happened to them because of their curve integrations. There were others which had hacks because of their Balancer V2 integrations, the Sturdy Finance Sentiment Protocol. But, and here is a silver lining, a lot of other projects had been vulnerable, right? And weren't exploited, and probably a lot more weren't exploited too, which I don't know about, right? We often don't know about this. So, quick take here. Like, it's very important to educate auditors about new attacks, and this has been done like a year ago, right? Long before the attacks happened, the education started, and a lot of projects had been secured by then. And bug bounty programs work, right? Sometimes. I'll skip over this. Please watch the talk given at DEF CON by Yanis, one of our engineers, on read-only reentrancy. I'm not going into that because we have no more time and we want to get to like some questions. I'll just have a very short thing here. This was last year's ECC. I asked the person. He's fine with that. We can't hear him. That's sad. So what he says here is like, look, I know where I am. I am on the left curve, right? And lots of my friends, they're in the middle. They are on the right. But the problem with them is, like, they think too much. They don't execute, right? So I'm here to tell you, like, if I can do it, so can you. If I can extract value from Ethereum, so can you. Which attack? So, I talked about it before. MEV bots. MEV bots gets exploited. Very interesting. Two big attacks. Unprotected callbacks is the first one, and the second one is they managed to break flash bots, private bundles. A very big attack. Yeah, we learned something more here. I am almost out of time, but...
Yeah, we'll make it quick for questions. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Do you like... Shall we jump to questions right away?
Just go quickly to, yeah, we can finish and then go questions, yeah. 5 minutes is fine.
Sure. So, like, if you keep your source code secret, it's not a protection. There are tools nowadays, like this one, which finds in unpublished code what the vulnerabilities are. Very direct, right? So don't think you're protected just because you keep your stuff secret. I wanted to get to Euler hack. I'll skip over Euler hack. Very interesting one. With that main takeaway, no one is safe. They did a lot of things right? And in the end, it did hit them. But, silver lining, you get your money back sometimes. And I just read, I wrote recovery of funds. Big things in the room which are missing, which we didn't talk about here. Biggest hacks by far are against centralized exchanges, right? FTX and so on. Semi-decentralized projects, or let's say quasi-centralized actually. Second biggest cause of hacks, like just last week, like multi-chain, right? And we have a new emerging threat, end user private key leakage, like basically wallets losing the private keys. So we didn't talk about this. I'll have a few take-home messages. I'll leave them up here, but now we can go to questions.
If anyone has a question, he can raise his hand or her hand. I will come to you with the mic.
It's very good, man. Thanks. Question, guys? Yeah, got a question there.
Yes, if I can explain the Euler hack, that was a question. So what happened to Euler? Again, it was an upgrade which caused Euler to, in the end, get hacked. It was an upgrade which was audited. The underlying thing here, what happened was, they added a function, donate to pool. This one seemed like it can do no harm, but when you donated to a pool, it didn't check that you donated, and that after your donation from the pool you donated from, your position was still healthy. So you could make a position unhealthy, and the attacker then could liquidate that position, do that again and again, earn the liquidation rewards, and this way drain the protocol. Like this is
Which is a beautiful attack.
It was nice, yeah, but it's
Technically speaking.
and these are the biggest types of attacks, like Oracle manipulation, the biggest one in smart contracts, right? After like FTXs and so on. But and then like some like these looping manipulations where you drain value out of protocols. We have seen these, and these ones are usually the ones where they make the top 10 leaderboard.
Yeah. Oracle manipulations, looping, and the second one is actually interesting, is like Web2 attacks on Web3 protocols. For example, Badger DAO and all different things where you manipulate either the website hosting the smart contract, not hosting the smart contract, but giving access to the smart contract, because you can either pretend that you're approving some tokens on behalf of someone, another contract, and then you can later steal the money. Basically, the hacker has access to your token, but you don't even know it about it. It's all types. So I think it's the top 3 attacks in the space.
And the last one you talked about, it's coming up, right? It's coming up more and more that like
but the
you get these
that was
traditional
really
ones.
sophisticated. They hack a router in a location in the state, and they could go on. I think there was domain hosting service provider, and they managed to go to that. So even yourself as a project that you're hosting your landing page for you, having access to the smart contract, you cannot really be protected against that. So you need to make sure the code that is deployed on your front end is you have some hash. Any modification of the front end, you shut down the front end, you shut down access to the smart contract. Multiple different way of attacks. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned the circuit breaker EIP. I would like to have your thoughts on that.
Which ones? Julien's or mine?
Yeah, the circuit breaker EIP that was recently open. You mentioned it earlier.
Yes. Okay, I'll give a quick idea what this is about. So there is an EIP out on the mostly discussed on EthCC Telegram channel. The idea here is that protocols include like so-called circuit breakers, basically functions where they can check if something bad is happening. For example, like more than 1 million has been withdrawn in one block or so, right? And then they just stop automatically. Some are more like enabling manual, immediately pausing, this kind of stuff. But here we are mostly talking about the circuit breakers. The biggest challenge those ones face, from my perspective, is the composability gets harder. You do add code, you add layers, and these layers expand. Everything which integrates with you also needs to think about these parts. The very good part, I'm honest, is it definitely reduces the impact if they are bug-free, right? So this is always the case, but it's just like 200 million lost in one transaction. That hurts a lot, right? And having these circuit breakers, it might help, but it's definitely something which I love in the Ethereum community. Like, we should try it, right? And then see. And we can experiment with these things.
And the time is over. We don't have time for the questions, sorry.
Okay, that's good.